Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to try to unpack some really interesting developments in Nigerian politics.
Hmm.
And all this news broke just yesterday, March 23rd, 2025,
Yeah.
thanks to Restore Nigeria News for their reporting on this.
Right.
So we've got some excerpts here
Yeah.
that we're going to be focusing on.
Yeah.
And, I think the most interesting element is this meeting that took place between Godaji Kazar, who's a prominent APC member,
Yes.
and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar.
Atiku,
Yeah,
the PDP.
right. And
It's big names.
big names. And on the surface, this
Hmm.
seems kind of strange.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that,
No.
cross party lines.
Yeah.
But when you look into it a little deeper, there's all this stuff going on underneath.
Yeah, so for you listening, our goal today is to kind of understand
Yeah.
why this is happening,
Mhm.
what it means, what the various reactions are to this, and kind of try to get to the bottom of what this signals for Nigeria's future.
The future.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
hopefully unlock some insights.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in.
Okay.
So this visit by Gudaji Kazara,
Okay.
like I said, a prominent APC member
Mhm.
visiting Atiku Abubakar,
Yeah.
was really the top story.
Yeah.
And I think the most interesting aspect of this is what
Mm-hmm.
Kazar himself said about it,
Right.
in terms of why this meeting was taking place.
Yes.
What stood out to you when you first read this?
I think what was most fascinating for me
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
his explanation for this, what seemed to be this unconventional move.
Right.
Right. He brought up the fact that
Yeah.
he wasn't alone in this.
Yeah.
He was accompanied by a whole delegation
Right.
of other northern politicians.
Yeah.
And he specifically said
Yeah.
that this was a visit decided upon by northern elders.
Yeah.
So for you listening, that immediately suggests there's some kind of strategic calculation
Yeah.
happening here
Yeah.
that's bigger than just two guys
Yeah.
meeting up for tea.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the influence of these regional and ethnic power blocks in Nigeria,
Yeah.
particularly up in the north.
Right.
So when he throws out this term,
Mm-hmm.
northern elders,
Yeah.
I think he's signaling that there's this, broad backing
Yeah.
from really well-established
Yeah.
community and political leaders
Yeah.
in that region.
Yeah.
And that, this isn't just some random thing. This
Right.
is something that could potentially
Yeah.
be a really serious
Yeah.
shift in alliances.
Absolutely. And the reason they're giving for this
Yeah.
alignment
Right.
is really quite direct.
Yeah.
He says they're concerned
Mhm.
that elected officials haven't been representing
Yeah.
their constituents.
They're people. Yeah.
They're people, they're not fulfilling
Yeah.
their responsibilities. And they're also
Yeah.
very clearly saying that they're
Yeah.
not satisfied
Yeah.
with the current administration's progress
Mm.
on combating corruption.
Corruption. Right.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge issue.
That's a really important thing to.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
one of the quotes that stood out to me was
Yeah.
he said, "This government had pledged to continue investigating these matters, yet progress has been insufficient."
Right?
So, what's really interesting there for you
Mm-hmm.
is that there's this potential undercurrent of dissatisfaction,
Yeah.
even within the ruling party itself.
Yeah.
Right. And that to me is really noteworthy because
Yeah.
it starts to raise the question, like,
Yeah.
is there some sort of growing internal pressure?
Yeah.
Or maybe even a fracturing of this
Yeah.
kind of unified front
Yeah.
that the APC has presented?
Yeah. And then he really, kind of drops the bomb
Oh, yeah.
when he says we're following Atiku's leadership,
That's huge,
which is,
especially for an APC member.
it's an APC member to say that's a really big
Yeah.
statement.
Absolutely.
And, he goes on to kind of emphasize that they need to unite patriotic politicians,
Mhm.
regardless of party, with the goal of saving our country. So
Right.
it sounds like a very dramatic.
A call to action almost.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting,
Yeah.
for you listening in a political system that is
Yeah.
often defined by,
Yeah.
very strong party loyalty.
Yeah. Very strong party loyalty.
This is a
Really big deal.
this is a major
Yeah.
signal
Yeah.
that there could be some
Yeah.
broader fracturing or realignment
Yeah.
within the ruling party itself.
Yeah.
Right?
And this idea that it's more about the national interest
Right.
than party.
Anti-party, yeah.
That
That often comes up when there's this
yeah.
sense of
either crisis
Yeah.
or widespread discontent
Yeah.
with what's currently going on.
Exactly. And I thought it was interesting. He said
Yeah.
that he's willing to follow the guidance
Yeah.
of not just Northern leaders,
Right.
but any Nigerian
Mm.
who's committed to progress.
Right. Anyone who puts the country first,
Yeah.
not themselves.
So it's like
Right.
really a sense of like,
Yeah.
there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We need to fix it.
We need to do something.
Yeah. And he even goes on to say, when talking about this visit to Atiku,
Yeah.
he says, our leader, he calls him my father.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So, that kind of language really speaks to
Yeah.
the respect that he holds for him.
Absolutely. And for you out there,
Yeah.
that personal sentiment adds a whole other layer of complexity to this,
Yeah.
because it suggests that these political alignments aren't just about, strategy
Right.
or maneuvering.
Yeah.
There's also this element of
Yeah.
personal relationships and
Yeah.
long-standing
Yeah.
respect
Yeah.
that can really shape things.
So it seems like there's a lot more going on than just...
Right. It's more than meets the eye.
Yeah.
For sure.
So all this happened right after the announcement of this coalition
yeah.
of opposition parties.
Right.
Which, as we look towards 2027,
Mm-hmm.
could be
It'd be huge.
a really big deal.
Right.
So who are the key figures here?
Well, for you,
Yeah.
what's really interesting about this
Yeah.
is just how much weight
Yeah.
seems to be behind it, right? They've got Atiku Abubakar
Mm-hmm.
for the PDP.
Right.
We've got Peter Obi,
Yeah.
who was the Labour Party's presidential candidate back in 2023.
Yeah.
And even Nasir El-Rufai,
Right.
the former governor of Kaduna State.
So,
So that's a pretty significant group of people.
yeah, it's a really diverse
Very diverse.
group of figures.
Yeah, and historically,
Yeah.
these types of coalitions in Nigeria
Yeah.
have struggled with,
Yeah.
contradictions
Yeah.
and a lack of a unified platform.
Yeah.
So for you,
Yeah.
the question becomes,
Yeah.
can this one overcome
Yeah.
those historical
Those hurdles.
hurdles?
Yeah. And their stated goal
Yeah.
is very clear.
Oh, yeah.
It's to unseat President Tinubu and the
Yeah.
APC
Mm-hmm.
in the 2027 elections.
2027.
So,
So we have this alignment,
right.
seemingly coming from within the ruling party.
Mm-hmm.
We have this announcement of this
Mm-hmm.
major opposition coalition.
Right.
I mean, are these two things
Like
connected
it must be.
in ways that we don't fully understand yet?
They have to be related. And, I think this kind of broad coalition
Yeah.
really suggests
Yeah.
that there's a recognition.
Yeah. Among the opposition.
Yeah.
That they need
Yeah.
to present this united front
Yeah.
if they want to have a chance
Yeah.
of challenging the incumbent party.
And they definitely have
Oh, yeah.
the potential
Right.
to be a serious
I mean,
case.
just the combined influence support base
Yeah.
of these individuals
Yeah.
is massive.
But can that...
That's the question.
Yeah.
Can these
Yeah.
historically differing
Right.
factions
Yeah.
actually come together
Yeah.
and form,
Around a shared...
a shared vision
Yeah.
and a shared strategy?
And a shared strategy. Yeah. But not everyone is convinced
Right.
that this is,
Of course not.
all that it's cracked up to be.
Yeah.
We have the perspective of Ibrahim Shekaro,
Okay.
former governor of Kano State,
Yeah.
who's expressed some pretty serious doubts
Mm-hmm.
about this alliance. What are his main concerns?
Well, for you,
Yeah.
this is where it gets really interesting,
Yeah.
because he really starts to question
Yeah.
the nature
Yeah.
and the strength
Yeah.
of this opposition alliance.
Yeah.
He calls it
Yeah.
a gathering of individuals with political aspirations.
Mm.
He's basically saying
Yeah.
these guys are just looking for positions.
Yeah.
They're not really interested in building
Yeah.
a cohesive coalition.
And he even goes on to say that
Yeah.
none of them have formally consulted
Right.
their party leadership
Right.
about this.
Exactly. So for you,
Yeah.
it's worth thinking about why
Yeah.
these individual consultations
Yeah.
are so important
Yeah.
in this context.
In Nigeria. Yeah.
Right, because in Nigeria,
Yeah.
these strong party structures
Yeah.
really dictate
Yeah.
grassroots mobilization,
Yeah.
overall strategy.
Yeah. It's how things
It's how things get done.
get done. Right. So it sounds like he's saying that,
Yeah, he's basically suggesting that
Yeah.
these are just individuals
Yeah.
acting on their own ambitions.
Right.
Right.
And that just because they're aligned doesn't mean
That mean their parties are aligned.
Yeah, their parties doesn't mean...
Though their people...
Or their supporters...
Are aligned.
Are on board with this.
Yeah, he even says that, just having well-known figures doesn't automatically mean...
It doesn't mean you're going to win.
Yeah, that you're going to be able to...
Right.
To win.
It doesn't equal success.
Yeah.
Right.
And he doesn't think that they're going to...
No, he's very skeptical.
Yeah.
Right? And to me,
yeah.
What he's really questioning is the
Right.
depth, the foundation of this coalition.
Yeah.
He's saying, look, without this formal endorsement and support from the parties,
the structures of the parties, they might not have the grassroots, the people on the ground,
the people power,
the machinery to actually
to make it work,
make this thing work.
Yeah.
Right. So he doesn't think it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah. It's a very different
perspective than that initial announcement.
Yeah.
Right, where everybody was so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you might expect.
Right.
This has been challenged.
Of course.
The PDP Northern Minority Consultative Forum has come out pretty strongly against Rekarau's remarks. What do they have to say?
So what's really insightful here for you is how strongly they defend this coalition. Yeah. They come out and they say Shekarau's comments are misguided, and they emphasize just how much experience these guys have.
Yeah. Yeah.
They say they have a deep understanding of Nigerian politics.
Right.
They point out that these are seasoned politicians. Yeah. They know what they're doing.
They know.
They're aware of the challenges.
The challenges, yeah.
They're dedicated to getting rid of the APC and President Tinubu.
So it's interesting. They're basically saying...
They're saying...
That experience.
Your experience trumps everything else.
Yeah, and this raises a really interesting question for you, which is, can the experience and the political know-how of these key individuals outweigh the need for this kind of top-down party support? Yeah. Especially early on. Especially when you're first getting this thing going.
Yeah. Right. So maybe that will come later.
Maybe.
But right now?
Maybe it's not necessary. Right now, it's about the individuals.
Big personalities coming together.
And they also point to the fact that there's all this dissatisfaction among Nigerians.
Yeah, they say that this coalition is tapping into a real desire for change.
Yeah.
They say the coalition's solidarity reflects the aspirations of many Nigerians who aren't happy.
Who want something different.
With the way things are.
Yeah.
So they're trying to say like, hey, we're not just doing this for ourselves.
Right.
We're doing this for the people.
Right.
We're the ones listening.
Yeah.
To what the people want.
And they even go so far as to...
And they even...
urge Shekarau.
Yeah, they say Shekarau should reconsider and join us.
Right.
Come on board.
Come on board. This is about...
Be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Right? So that's interesting, too.
Yeah. What is that? What does that tell you?
Yeah. What does it tell us about?
How important they think this unity is.
Yeah. Like, are they desperate or do they really believe that this is the right path?
Yeah. And they end by saying their determination is unwavering. They are fully focused on 2027.
Focused and
providing an alternative.
Right, a credible alternative.
They even say the political environment is primed for change.
Primed for change. That's a pretty bold statement.
Pretty bold. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got this really...
So for you listening, this is a clash of perspectives. Yeah. Right? You have this initial optimism, this excitement when this coalition is announced. Yeah. And then you've got this seasoned politician who's questioning their strength.
Their unity.
Their unity.
And then you've got this rebuttal.
The strong defense.
Yeah. Yeah. Emphasizing.
Like, hey, these guys.
They know what they're doing.
They're experienced.
Yeah.
They're determined.
Yeah.
It really shows you just how complex.
And unpredictable.
And unpredictable. Nigerian politics are, especially as we get closer to these elections.
It's 2027. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to kind of quickly recap, we've got this. We've got this surprising move by a prominent APC member, saying that he's
publicly supporting a PDP leader.
Right.
We have the announcement. of this coalition.
And this major opposition coalition.
Right.
And then we have this...
And then we have this seasoned politician who's saying, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we've got these
it's a
contrasting viewpoints that really highlight, this dynamic...
It's a dynamic nature.
And contentious nature of politics.
In Nigeria.
Yeah.
And it seems like...
And it's clear that the political landscape is changing. Is shifting.
Yeah. But where it's going?
Who knows?
We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you listening, I think the question to consider is, what are the factors?
Yeah. What are the things?
Yeah. What are the things
that actually make these realignments successful?
And what are the obstacles?
Just gets in the way.
That get in the way of forming this...
creating...
this truly unified opposition.
Unified opposition.
What does all this tell us?
Right.
About where Nigeria is at right now.
Yeah.
And where it might be going in the next...
What are the paths?
To change.
Yeah.
Right?
I think this is just...
This is just the beginning.
Yeah, the beginning.
Of what's going to be a fascinating... and closely watched... period. In Nigerian politics.
So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
For this deep dive.
See you next time.